Hey everybody, I'm Tim Wagner and welcome back to another Writing in the Dark video. This time I want to talk to you about a book I got coming out next week called Let Me Tell You a Story. It's the latest in the Writing in the Dark series. So the very first book, Writing in the Dark, make sure you see my name on it, Writing in the Dark, it's a book all about writing horror. And it's kind of like an overview and why anybody can get stuff out of it. A lot of people think it's for beginners, or at least they find it very useful for beginners. Followed it up with Writing in the Dark, the workbook, which is a bunch of exercises to help you out. And then the latest one, this is the one that's coming out on Thursday, October 5th, Let Me Tell You a Story. This one's a little different. One of the things that I did in Writing in the Dark, the first one, was I had exercises at the end of each chapter. And a lot of people loved those, and it inspired me to write a whole book of them. Wasn't sure I could, and I was surprised by how many I could come up with. And a lot of people found it very, very useful, which makes me happy. But one of the other things I did in both the first one and the second one is that I critiqued one of my own stories. I talked about the inspiration for it. I talked about, the techniques I used. I talked about what I would have done differently. And people liked that too. And then when it came time for a third book, I said, maybe people would like sort of a weird hybrid thing where I take a collection of stories from throughout my career, from the one of the very earliest that I published, to one of the more recent, and talk about where I was as a writer at that time, what the inspirations were, what kind of techniques did I use, what did I struggle with, what new techniques did I learn, and then looking back at it now from the perspective of the more seasoned writer instead of saying just older, what would I do differently? For example, so much has changed in my life in terms of the relationship of genders to each other, to the awareness of LGBTQ society. Society is the word, culture maybe is what I'm looking at. Rights, of course, for sure, but just in terms of the culture, the community. Ableism, which is always a factor in horror, because so many things in horror are about distortion, including physical distortion, mental distortion. And how do you do that without, being ableist? So, I got a lot out of doing it myself, too. And then at the end of each chapter, I present exercises based on whatever came up in that chapter. So it's a weird thing. It is, part short story collection. It's part writing instruction manual. And because I'm talking about my life at the time and what aspects of my life I drew on to write these stories, it's part memoir too. So I'm hoping people will dig it. We'll see. You'll have to let me know. So, why would you like it? Well, if you're a fan of my fiction, you'll probably like it because it's like a career retrospective. You can see the evolution of my work from when I was young to when I'm not so young now. If you like my how to write books, you found them useful. This will be different because it's a deeper dive into the techniques and how they work, or how they could work better. Also, if you just want to know where one horror writer comes up with his crazy ideas, if you're like me, you really love story notes in collections, and so this is kind of like that in a way. The story notes are focused on the craft of writing to a degree, but they still have a lot of the kind of more personal memoir kind of things that often come up with story notes. So if you like any of that stuff or all that stuff, you should like this book. So what did I get out of it? Just beyond the satisfaction of writing it, not being sure I could write a hybrid thing like this. So, I challenged myself, and I think it worked out pretty good. At least my editor thinks so. Hope you will too. I really got a much better picture of my development as a writer over 35 years. And what was interesting is I got to see that a lot of the stuff I still do was there in the beginning. I sort of expected to see not a whole lot in the beginning stories of me, who I am now, or what I have learned along the way. And it's interesting because, of course, we're always the same person from beginning to end of our lives in one sense. It's like we're nesting dolls. We carry everything with us. We add more to it. So it was kind of like that. It was kind of like, taking myself apart as if I was a nesting doll. How's that for a horror writer image? So I saw some story structures that I repeated and learned, but eventually learned to vary. I did see some of the cultural stuff I talked about, becoming more aware of sexism, homophobia, ableism, things that were like embedded in the culture that I was not aware of when I wrote the stories. Thought I was, but you learn more as time goes on. So that was important to me to see. It was like gratifying to know. And humbling, to see that this is the way you were way back when, in terms of attitudes towards things that are really important to you now. And they were important to you then, but you can see how you've evolved. Makes you wonder how much more evolving, you've got to do. I'll do my best as long as I'm here to keep on going. So if you're a writer, one of the things you can do, hopefully you'll buy my book and read it, but if you don't, one of the things you can do if you want to try something similar is you could just do it for yourself to get a sense of your development. One of the things I did really early on in my career, after a few years of submitting stories, this is back in the day before the internet, so submitting by mail, getting responses by mail, is that I sent things out I started sending things to the small press instead of bigger magazines, because the small press gave personalized feedback a lot. And I thought, who better to teach me, what editors want than editors themselves. And what I did after about 2 years is I took all the various rejection letters and the ones that had comments, and I collated them in terms of how many said that my beginning was too slow, how many said that I had too much exposition. And I was able to get a real sense of what I needed to work on, but also a sense of my strengths, the things that they kind of praised. So, if you've been writing for a while, even if it's only been a few years, hell, it might even work for you if it's just been a few months. You could go ahead and just do that kind of process, which is similar to what I did in this book, but that's just for you, for your own growth. But other stuff you could do is you could use this kind of approach to make content for yourself. So, for your website, if you've got a YouTube channel like me, or just TikTok videos, or whatever it is you might be doing, social media posts, you could take one of your earlier stories and you can go ahead and talk about the things that I talked about. What was your inspiration for the story? What were the ideas? How did it come about? Did you draw on your life at all? Were you drawing on things like, I loved vampires as a kid, so I decided to do a vampire story, whatever. And then do you think it was successful or not? Did it do everything that you wanted? Regardless of whether it was published or not, doesn't matter. You can just use this to still illustrate. Matter of fact, some unpublished ones could be really good for this. And then talk about, what did you learn from the writing out of it, and what would you do different next time? So you don't have to put a whole book together like I did, and it doesn't have to be focused on writing instruction, but it can be something that might work really well, just for interesting content for your readers. So you might think about doing that yourself. So buy my book. If you do, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you'll let me know. So here it is again, so you can see it. I love that kind of sort of pen nib skull icon that they've been using to brand the Writing in the Dark books at Raw Dog Screaming Press. I really do appreciate your feedback, because the last 2 books in this series wouldn't have existed without your feedback. And who knows what else I might do based on your feedback. But the only thing I care about with these books is beyond I want to go ahead and do a good job for my publishers. They have a lot of faith in my work, and I really want these books to be a success for them. But my real concern is just that they're useful for you, that you enjoy them. If you're a writer, that you find them useful, that they help you along in your writing journey. Even if you say that Tim's an idiot and I'm going to do things differently, it's fine, because that still, my work still got you to that point. That's all I care about, is helping people to grow as writers. It's kind of my mission in life. All right, thank you very much for watching this. You got any comments, please leave them below. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And like I said, my book comes out October 5th, 2023, if you're watching this 5 years from now. And I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. Bye now.